All right. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Meet the Authors event, listening to Otherness with Radvilė Rimgailė-Voicik and Santiago Eslava-Bejarano. Stories have the ability to bring us together around a collective imagination and create refuge where we can connect with other people and the world. This is why at Wimblu, we have set out to create spaces of community around our stories to come together to navigate these uncertain times we live in, connect with different perspectives, and imagine other possible worlds. The Meet the Authors encounters are part of our efforts to connect the persons behind our stories and create a community of storytellers addressing the intersections of ecology and spirituality. These conversations allow us to delve deeper into the themes that each story explores, the creative processes involved, and the worldviews from which they emerge. So today we have two amazing guests. Our first guest is Radvilė Rimgailė-Voicik, a Lithuanian botanist and scientist at Vilnius University Life Science Center in Lithuania, specializes in researching lycopods that evoke the ancient memories of the dinosaur era. She passionately delves into the interplay between the rich history of botany and the contemporary realities, as well as dreaming about the prospects of botany. She is the co-author of Lycophyte Futures, a multimedia story created with Greta Valvonite, in which learning from lycophytes and their world, Greta and Radvilė reflect on the importance of becoming intimate with otherness so that we may imagine futures of coexistence. Our second guest is Santiago Eslava-Bejarano from Colombia. He is a PhD student in comparative literature at the University of Southern California. He holds a master's degree in Latin American literature from the University of California, Davis, and a master's degree in literature with an emphasis on classical studies from the University of the Andes, Colombia. His research explores the ways in which language and interspecies communication are represented and problematized in contemporary literature, arts, and philosophy. He is the author of the story Tending to the Pain of the Jungle, a text in which Santiago reconsiders what counts as writing, reading, and language to expand his attention towards the memory of the territory in the context of Colombia becoming the first country to include the testimony of nature as part of the memory of an armed conflict. So thank you again. We're going to start the conversation with this question about both pieces seem to emerge from a long process of listening and active attention to a forest, to a territory, to a memory itself. Could each of you describe what that process of listening looked like for you and how it eventually translated into the form of your piece took?
So yeah, in Lycophyte Futures, we are having a conversation with Greta. And it was an interesting way to write a piece, an article, just in a conversation. And my background comes from biology, field of biology. So the listening is more related to the methods that we use in the field when we work on species, when we are collecting data. So usually what you do, you go, you measure, you analyze how many species there are and stuff like that. So it's very metrical, numerical. And when I met Greta first time, she gave me a different perspective. She came from a perspective that she got from macro photography, from that close-up very different view of the same plant that I knew, and that was common and not really interesting because like you've seen it every day in the field. And this collaboration was really interesting from that perspective, that I get a chance to listen to the same story from a different angle, absolutely different angle. And then it was interesting to apply this method to other common problems, ideas that we have in our culture, and to go from that.
Yes, so I must admit that my writing process was also collaborative with Alessandra, the editor of Wimblu. That was an amazing experience for me because I am used to write in another register as well, right? In another voice. It's not as metric or like numeric as Radvilė was saying that her methods are, but still it's a different type of discourse, right? And I remember Alessandra telling me to explore more this inner, more personal voice, which was challenging. But to go to your question, Paulo, about listening, my listening, I think, had like different layers of mediation. Of course, all listening is mediated. There's a discourse that it's at play, and also like the devices that we use. But in my case, the device that I was using or that I was approaching was the Truth Commission's final report of the more than 70-year war in Colombia. So that listening device, and that's how they also conceived of the final report. Alejandro Castillejo, who is one of the Truth Commissioners, he talks about the final report as a listening device. That device is articulated in human voices. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about that later. But that's also something that posed challenges for me when I was trying to figure what the testimony of nature was. Um, but yeah, so that was mm, the way in which I approached the testimony, and that was how I listened to the jungle in a way, if that's something that we could say, and that made me rethink what reading and writing are as embodied practices, as something that we do with our ears, with our hands, with our eyes. And maybe that's why Alessandra was so insistent in saying that I should explore more my bodily lived experience with these issues, because we tend to think about writing and reading as disembodied metaphysical practices that happen in the realm of ideas, instead of like this thing that we do every day where we see it, or maybe in your case, Radvilė, where you go to the forest and you touch and you smell and you hear. But even with books, we're also dealing with leaves, with like botanic material in a sense, and that I think calls for a re-examination of what these practices are.
Yes,
Yeah,
that. Go ahead, Radvilė. Sorry.
yeah. I just wanted to add, yeah, also Alejandro helped us to develop the piece that we wrote. But I don't think that the problem was that we could not find the personal context in the story. It was more how to make it the dialogue work with those different ideas that we had in mind. Because I came from the fundamental sciences, and for me it was important to look for other ways how to talk about the plant memory, this oldest group of vascular plants that are still here, but they are not quite interesting for anyone to see and discover. And Greta, she comes from communication, so she knows how to deliver the idea. But yeah, it was an interesting path for us to take.
And that's a really a good point. Like, because I feel like both stories have this complexity on them that is not only, it doesn't just comes from a rational source. It comes also, you allow yourselves to get other perspectives or other experiences, bodily experiences into the stories in a way. Since we are speaking about this, is really related to creative decisions that you make. And like you were mentioning, Radvilė, the Lycophyte piece moves between first person reflection, scientific detail, video footage, and images from the forest that you both created, while Santiago's essay reconsiders what counts as writing, reading, and language itself. So now that we're speaking about the medium we use, how did this, with the medium you work in shape the final result? How this, your sense of what telling story means? I just want to listen a little bit more about this creative process, or choosing, in your case, Radvilė and Greta, choosing multimedia, not only text, but you add a lot of layers. And also, and Santiago has like these different voices, from also speaking from his own experience, his own memories, individual experience of with the books, with reading nature, plus now looking at this testimony. So I want to know what a little bit more about these creative decisions you made in the medium specifically.
So for us, we have a page, botanical sandbox, wespacewalk.com, and together with Greta, we are working maybe almost 2 years on different stories, and they are all mixed media. So we try video, images, macro images, and then the texts usually are more my thing, what I do there, and also like the objects. I propose what story would fit better which month. At first, when we decided to try to submit to Wimblu, we thought that it would be nice to have a video format, only video format. But we probably were scared a little bit to do that. Like we in our on our stories, I don't remember, is it November? We had 1 year every month, one story with images and videos, and we did 1 month with audio. It was not professionally done and stuff, but it was challenging for both of us, interesting. But yeah, video format is something that we would love to work on in the future, to have the story only in video. So yeah, so we were used to this mixed idea with the images and then the text accompanying it. But it would be important to note that usually we would just give stories, information about the object that we are photographing, not about ourselves, and not about the general situation, geopolitical situation of our country. And yeah, that was a different approach, really important, empowering, probably even. Yeah.
Definitely loved that mixed media approach in your article. As I was reading it, I wasn't aware that that was going to be the case. So at some point, I started to hearing all these sounds, and I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure, but this is also interesting. I think it's in one of the first videos. There's a bird singing. I'm not sure if, and this is the tricky thing. I didn't know if it was a bird outside of my window or the sound coming from the computer. So it was an immersive experience that I highly value, and it makes me think of the Truth Commission in Colombia, because these testimonies that I am speaking of and the final report of the Truth Commission is also mixed media. So there's a huge volume, maybe I will be able to find it and show it to you in a minute. So there's this big volume that's written, and there's also some pictures, but there's also video and sound as well, and that's something that I want to explore more. But in my case, and in the article, I chose to focus on the written testimonies. These are hundreds of testimonies, and the Truth Commission actually interviewed 30,000 people to develop this volume. And well, they are the ones who proposed the testimony of nature. And then I started thinking about like writing and reading as we have spoken. Um, and then as I kept wondering about these questions, particularly for the article, I realized that these are questions that are at the core of my discipline. Like thinking about this critically means rethinking what I do as a literary scholar. What else will I be able to read or not? Was one of the questions. And then, and as I mentioned, like Alessandra encouraged me to explore more my own history, because when I think we trace our memories of the first times that we read or wrote, what we find is that it's something that implicates our whole body. When you're a child and you're seated trying to learn how to write, that's something that you feel in your hands, not so much in your brain. Um, and for me, that was quite perplexing, but also telling in the sense that it shows that continuity between our own practices and non-human ways of living, which is something that philosophy, ethology insist on time and again, right? There's this philosopher called James Rachels. He has a wonderful book on the moral implications of Darwinism, where he says that one of these implications is that we cannot think of nature as separated by huge gaps, that what we find in our human life is in continuity with non-human life. And if writing and reading are human experiences that are in continuity with non-human experiences, we are able to wonder like what that continuity looks like, and what those non-human experiences of writing and reading look like as well. Which is something that I think I found also in your article, Radvilė, when you think of lycophytes as tradition keepers, and I loved that expression, because not only human beings store and continue with tradition, and I find that also motivating and inspiring.
Yeah, I would like to add here. When you were talking, I was thinking about this idea of value that we give to other objects, alive objects. And in my teaching, I usually say that there is the value that is in a relationship between two different groups of organisms. Not it might be bacteria and plants, for example, not human. And but when we're looking at plants from a human perspective, it's really hard to give them the value that they have just from the fact that they are there, that they are alive. And it's really hard for other human beings to give them that value. And it's usually I can see from the audience that they think that I'm really naive by saying this, but it's really important that just to share this idea that it's not every time the economical value of the wood, for example. It might be a totally different perspective, but every organism has the value of itself just because it's there. And for me, the forest is really, a place of memory, and it's really not important that the forest might not write his or her story with the letters that we know. Maybe they are writing with their roots. I don't know. Somehow it's happening there, you know. Yeah.
That is beautiful. And that is really a segue to the next questions that I want to focus more about in the memory, because both of your pieces seem to treat landscape itself as memory. Lycophyte Futures, the forest is described as something that remembers, holding the marks of both peaceful and turbulent times in things like fairy rings that take a century to form. And in your essay, Santiago, the Colombian territory is recognized as a witness whose testimony becomes part of the country's memory of an armed conflict. For each of you, what drew you to this idea that non-human beings or places can hold memory, and that peace, or the lack of it, might be something that something a landscape carries or registers over time, rather than just a human condition?
Really, when you are walking in the forest in Lithuania, you can discover the sites that were disturbed during the Second World War, and it was used for the fighting. So it's there, the memory, you can visually see it. Also, the mass graves from the Holocaust, they're also there. So when you are looking from this like big geopolitical conflicts and how it's changed the landscape itself, it's really written in the ground itself. But from the perspective of plants that are growing there, there is this biological term succession, how the environment changes from when it's totally open. You can see one type of vegetation, then it changes to another, and it's like every time it's like a continuum of change that's happening there. And for me, it's similar to the idea how your memories change when something just happened and it's fresh and it's open, and especially if it's something similar to the events that happened and were described by Santiago. So when it's the time passes, it's changing how you remember or how you feel when you read it, if it's not your own experience. And the same thing happens in the nature, in the forest, when the forest develops. Before that, usually was an open space, maybe because of the human activities, maybe not. But that change happening, it's also related to the idea how you grieve for someone who passed. It's like for 5 or 10 years, maybe you remember the exact date when the death occurred of the person. And for example, my father, he died long time ago, almost 20 years ago. And for 10 years, I really remembered the date when it happened. You know, I visited his grave. And now sometimes I catch myself that I forgot, you know, and at first it's like embarrassing, but then it changes. So it's similar to the succession, how the vegetation changes after the disturbance.
Yes, and I really resonate with what you say, Radvilė, with these sites of inscription of war. And that's something that I have also explored in the final report. But for me, it's also important to highlight that this idea that the territory has memory and that it can be a victim of the war comes from the struggle of indigenous and Afro-Colombian communities in Colombia. So the Truth Commission proposed to hear the testimony of nature as one of the tasks that it legally had to undertake because the territory was already considered a victim of the conflict since 2011 with the Victims Law that recognized that the traditional and ancestral territories of Afro-Colombians and indigenous peoples were victims of the war. And that is anchored in the cosmovision of these communities. So the Truth Commission took that task and tried to the best of their ability to carry it on without the framework in which indigenous and Afro-Colombians understand this type of memory. And that's part of the challenge because I am not a member of any of those two communities, or well, more than two diverse communities, but still I am convinced that humans are not the only beings capable of memory. And I think that this idea of succession is really interesting in relationship with the approach that I have undertaken from the field of biosemiotics, which is like a very important field in anthropology, but also in the social sciences nowadays, that considers that meaning is something that arises in interactions between different types of beings. So not only we read books, but dogs, in a sense, read or understand or interpret the smell of urine or feces, and different types of like animals are able to recognize um, signs and icons and indexes in the behavior of other beings that surround them, right? So that takes memory outside of this individual brain that each one of us has and distributes it in the interactions that are sustained through time, in these habits or reenacted interactions that I think in a way constitute the memory of the territory in the sense of this preservation or keeping of a tradition, as Radvilė said, that I found so compelling. So animals in their interactions with plants and with other beings keep those traditions alive, and when war happens, when war arises in a territory, those interactions are shattered. And I think that that's a moment, a traumatic moment for a territory where memory is jeopardized, because if memory again consists in this succession or keeping of the tradition, when something like blowing a pipeline happens that destroys a river, those interactions are shattered, and that memory is is obliterated in a sense. And that's why also I found so interesting that in your article, Radvilė, you mentioned semiocide, the shattering of the frameworks that make meaning arise and that make meaning possible. So this semiocide, I think, describes very well the focus of my research right now, which is more than the actual meaning of a war for a forest, which is something that maybe we won't be able to access. How other beings have been silenced, and that meaning, whatever that looks like for them, is hindered. That's what I am focusing right now. And that's, I think, how I am trying to understand this notion of the forest having memory, and these traumatic events that jeopardize it or like shatter even the possibility of remembering. But in a way, and just to come back to what something that Radvilė said, I do think that there are instances, material instances, in which territories store the memory of war. As you said, with the Holocaust camps, and in the case of Colombia, and this is something that Daniel Riserna, who's an anthropologist who has studied this, he has a great book called "When Forests Run Amok." He, for example, gives the case of witness trees, which are trees that store bullets in their barks, and they build tissue around those bullets. So their bark changes, and you can actually see how the tree itself has been changed and marked by war. So that's another sense in which, like, I think that territories can have memories of war. But I'm more interested in these instances in which, like, memory itself kind of breaks.
And thank you so much for sharing this amazing thoughts. It's really interesting conversation. And I feel like the concept of semiocyte that you were mentioning, that is mentioned on the Lycophyte Futures piece, has to do with this idea of value that Radvilė was mentioning before. And in the case of the testimonies of nature and war conflict, human war conflict, we tend to kind of try to, when we say read the nature, we want to extract like the meaning of it. When I think we, like you were saying, Santiago, it will be more like, let's say, useful in a way to just understand that something is happening. And when that thing blows up a pipeline or whatever happens, that stops happening. It doesn't matter what it is, because like you explore in your piece, it's really hard to, we will never access some realms of nature because of our lack of capabilities, like, or not the lack, but our capabilities are different from other animals. But the fact that there's something happening and it's disrupted is I think where we as humans sometimes tend to minimize, because there's no value, we cannot understand it, we cannot explain it in a rational way. So it's really nice thoughts about this, specifically about the value, memory as also something that I feel really powerful is what Radvilė were mentioning. You were saying as well, Santiago, it's like a fertile soil, a process, fertile soil for new ways of relating to the past. Also, in a way, is a reminder that the past lives here right now at this moment. In a way, forests do that in a lot of ways, and that's something that I think in both pieces is explored. So I'm going to do the question that is more personal and is related more to this what we call spirituality, or the personal relationship with the world. Radvilė and Greta described their encounters with lycophytes as something close to intimacy, even reverence. Like ecology is about intimacy. And Santiago's essay traces a personal history of learning to listen to non-human voices, from childhood books to questions of justice. What did creating this piece change in you, personally or spiritually? And is there a moment in the process that still stays with you?
Yeah, for me, probably the most influential sentence or moment that I realized was about those that shirt that already has some tears on the sleeves. I'm still using it when I'm going to the forest. This idea that more than 20 years probably passed from the beginning when I start my career as a botanist, and it was really peaceful years, and I'm really grateful that my country is still free, not occupied by Russia, and that I get to do the things that I am doing, to teach botany, to give to other biology students and other people that are interested in plants, to give them this perspective of the importance of the subject. And really, Greta gave me this gift as well, that there are many secrets there that we need to explore. But how you can do that, you have to give the time for this exploration. So it's you have to develop a relationship with the site that you are researching, with the plants that you are looking at. So you have to sit there and just take a moment to discover yourself once again. So yeah, I'm often going back to that paragraph that I wrote about the history of myself that already happened, and yeah, it's really precious for me to have that.
I resonate a lot with what you say. I think that this, as I was mentioning a few moments ago, we tend to think about these academic um, tasks and or research as something that's part of our life, but that in a way does not um, require a self-understanding. And thinking deeply about this issue made me realize that my whole life is in this that I am devoting um, the best of my waking hours to these subjects and thinking why is this the case and why I am finding value in this is a question that requires that I explore my self-perception, my own identity, which for me has been really difficult because even if I am in the realm of humanities, where these type of questions seem to be more acceptable, I think that in the like hard sciences, I am used to writing academic papers. I met Alessandra actually at an academic conference. I was delivering like a raw version of what I published for Wimblu. And Alessandra approached to me and she told me that she really liked the idea and that we like should like publish something in the magazine. And then when I handed the first draft, she was I'm not going to say disappointed because that's not the word that she used. um, but she told me like, "Where's your voice?" There's all these quotations, all these authors that you're like talking about. Where's your own voice? And that question of the voice is a question of meaning. Like, how do we make meaning? And that led me to again like explore my history to expose myself in ways that I had not done in my life, like talking about my childhood and publishing something under my name was beyond my imagination. And then I think that you can see it in the article as well. I have many doubts because I'm exploring things that are certainly weird, like talking about like the memory of a tree. If you're sober, seems like you're going crazy. The text itself it's full of questions and doubts that I don't end up answering. But I think that, and this is what my biggest, most important takeaway from the experience. It made me realize that I am betting my life in this, and that these activities uh, are something that I do with my body. That's something that I forgot for a long time, and that makes me think that I am an animal who's doing something by writing. That writing is something that animals, not only human animals but also others, do. That's probably my biggest takeaway. It has been an amazing experience for sure. I really enjoyed writing this article.
Go ahead,
Doubting is
Radvilė.
very, very important part of PhD studies. It doesn't matter, are you in biology, biotechnology, or literature, it doesn't matter. Like in third year, you start to doubt everything you've done before because it's like it has no purpose, no meaning whatsoever. I was there as well. So it's better on the other side when you graduate and you're like, you know that you've done an important research, and yeah, from the time perspective, you can see that it was really very courageous and amazing work. So this will happen to you as well.
Yeah, And at Wimblu, we always try to leave a space, or the type of nonfiction stories that we publish and create are not seeking for answers in a way. We are trying to stay with the questions, and both stories allow us or invite us to have or explore questions that are really really big questions, like, how can we relate with otherness and imagine futures with them in a different, a more peaceful future in a way, or a different one. And also, I'm so glad you both found spaces to get out of this more structured ways of telling stories that are also needed. But yeah, I think sometimes doesn't allow you to include your own perspectives, your own doubts, your own fears, your own emotions. And I think it's really clear that both the stories, I can see you both of you there, and I can see that you invite us to more existential questions than just giving some answers that are like what a lot of stories do nowadays. But that kind of closes the way in as a spectator to the stories. So we really appreciate that. Carolina and myself, we were aware of what was going on both processes. So we were looking at both stories getting built, and this was also a really, really amazing process. And both of you and Greta did a really good, I believe, a transformation process of the first piece that we saw, and the one that came out was really, really nice. And I want to invite you both, if you have any questions you want to address at this moment towards you guys, or just say something before we close.
Yes, for sure. It's not a question, but something that also will stay with me and that I want to think more deeply about. The notion of value that you mentioned, Radvilė, I think that is really important. And I think that value and relationship and how value tends to be relational is something that we tend to forget. I think that we assign value as something that is intrinsic to something, gold, crypto coins, whatever, and we tend to think that that's a quality that some things have in themselves instead of something that arises from relationships. And what that implies, I think, is that observation and a detained, sustained observation is necessary to recognize value. When I was reading your article on Lycophytes, I realized how valuable they are and how easy you can just like ignore that value because they're on there on in the understory of forests. You walk by the trees, you're maybe amazed by the big trees, and you just like ignore other forms of life that that not only are capable of so many things but also have like an important function in their ecosystems, right? And I think that something similar happens with the Truth Commission and with the testimony of nature. It is the willingness to calm down, to pause for a while, and to observe other beings that enables us to recognize their value. And in this society where everything goes so quickly, value is lost because attention is lost, and they profit on our attention. We all know this, like cell phones, and social media. They profit on our attention, but the risk is that we lose the value of everything that surrounds us, right? And that's something that I don't want to get too political, but that's something that I see in these elections in Colombia at this moment. There's this promise of infinite value that's it's only economic, and that it is at the expense of paying attention to what really matters, that they can extract value and ignore the other like infinite possibilities of finding value beyond money, right? So yeah, I think that comment that you made, Radvilė, will stay with me, and I want to think more deeply about it.
So similar to me, when I was reading your work, it was very interesting, the idea of the testimony of non-humans, and that this can be described as a memory and written in some sort of media. So it was a new way, new approach to think about how nature develops. And yeah, I will look into it when I will revise some of the literature regarding the historical collections, for example. So it's a new perspective. I never thought about it before. And yeah, so regarding the value, the economic value that we are like doing all the things that we do for, it's really like short for a short period of time, and the observation and the connection, the relationship with the nature itself can give us a long-lasting happiness, I think. So that's a way that we should try to look into plants in the future, I think. I'm hoping.
If you want to support our project, you can share this episode, visit our digital magazine wimblu.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our Patreon community where you can access exclusive content starting at $3 a month. Your support allows us to create and share content that reimagines a fair and healthy world for all life forms.